Hey sister, welcome to Around the Kitchen Table. This week I am going to be diving into something that really touched me and triggered me big time at a wellbeing festival. And so today might feel a little bit different, but thank you for joining me. I don't take your time lightly from wherever you are. Thank you for joining me around this kitchen table. Hey sisters, so today's episode might feel a little different. I'm not here to sugarcoat or soothe, and I'm so here to speak a truth that needs to be said loud, clear, and without apology. No means no. End of story, full stop, no smile required, no explanation needed, no second chances to try again. Just no. This past weekend, I was at the Mind Body Spirit Festival in London, and let me just tell you that I love that space. I love what is created there. I choose the stall that I'm on, and it hadn't really dawned on me how triggering that space I had chosen would be. And yet it was absolutely perfect for what I needed to see play out in front of me. This was a place where, you'd hope would feel safe, although you'll know if you've listened to me before that I talk often about safety being an inside job. We can't control what happens outside of us. We can only control what happens inside of us. So often things might feel unsafe in the outside world. So this is a space where you would expect deep respect, it to feel very sacred, very conscious. But what I witnessed and when I tell you who from, let me just tell you deeply, viscerally triggered me so badly to the point where I had to say something. And my beautiful, loving, kind husband was stood behind me, and I could feel on our stool, and I could feel him thinking, don't piss off a menopausal woman. It's the last thing you want to do, especially one who is deep into working with women and, re-establishing those boundaries. So here's what happened. The Hare Krishnas have a pop-up temple. It's beautiful. I listen to kirtan all weekend. Sometimes it can be quite loud, but that's okay. That's the space I choose. And I choose that space because it's outside of the main kind of drag, the main walkways where my ADHD brain can feel quite overwhelmed, and I can be trying to talk to people, but my brain is off in all different tangents and directions. And so I specifically go close to that kind of space because I have a space that's open fronted. It gives me an opportunity to speak to people, to connect with people, to connect with the women who need what we do, to share our journal, and to really have a beautiful kind of connection in space. Anyway, day one. Day one was perfectly beautiful. Day one, they were there. We were at the back of their temple. Let's just say the front of it, which is a yurt, and the front of their temple is the other side. And they have their stalls all set up around there, and they, all good. Close to one of the stages, they've got access to lots of people. All good. Day two, I arrive, and one of their tables is being brought round to the back of their temple. The back of their temple then becomes like literally their table is almost in the gangway, the walkway of where people walk past. And on that stall comes all of the Bhagavad Gita and their books and their things that they're going to share. And three monks, robed monks, young men, all beautiful souls, big smiles, all lovely, all connected, lovely, sacred, spiritual human beings. And I thought, okay, I wonder how this is going to work, mainly because of the space. Like, we're contracted to not take up space in the gangways because actually it's really important that people have free flow and movement around the festival. They're now here. And I spoke to the management about it, and they shared that basically there'd been a leak in the night. Some of their books had got wet. They've moved kind of some of the table around. Okay, fine. I'm okay with that. But then the show opened, and more people were around and more people were wandering about. And every time I had eye contact with a woman who was kind of walking towards our space, she would get stopped. And when I say every time, I literally mean virtually every time. There was another stall that literally anyone could hardly get past because of the Hare Krishnas. And I don't know about you, when you see somebody who comes up to you in the street and wants to talk to you in that way, it can be for me quite oppressive. And so I literally avoid them because I don't want to have to say no because they're not going to listen anyway. And because actually that's going to make me feel a bit icky. I'm not someone who finds no very easy, or I never used to find no very easy. And so I would avoid them. So our footfall that day was particularly low because nobody could get to us. Nobody could get to us because by the time these women had been kind of, I'm going to use the word accosted by the monks sharing the Bhagavad Gita with them, they just wanted out. Like you could see it in their faces. They were like, I'm done. I'm out of here. And then they just stopped coming to that area. And then, and so it just became a thing. But I also watched that they were approaching women repeatedly, way more than men. And when a man said no, that was okay. When a man said, oh, put his hand up and just went no and just walked on by, that was fine. When a woman said no, even after they stepped away, even after they clearly expressed disinterest, I mean, predominantly these women weren't saying no very clearly. Perhaps they were like, oh no, I'm really sorry, I've got to go somewhere. Really sorry, I'm just off to look at this store. Really sorry, I'm heading, they would be more polite than the men. The men would just say no. A lot of the women would be like, as we do as women, they want to they're worried about upsetting someone. They don't want to, appear to be rude. So I get it. Perhaps a no wasn't clear enough. So I called it out. I popped over to them. Lovely Hare Krishna that I've been speaking to earlier in the day before. And I said, look, I don't want any confrontation. This isn't about confrontation. I would just love to ask, what does no mean to you? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, can I give you an explanation and a context? He said, sure. I said, great. Well, when a woman comes towards you and she says, actually, no, I'm just passing, or I'm just walking off, or I'm just going to this workshop, or just no, plain no. What does that mean to you? And he said, well, they didn't really tell me no. They made me, feel like it was okay. They were smiling. Like, of course they're smiling. You're smiling at them and they're smiling back. But he was like, but that means that they're open. And I'm like, well, that might mean that they're open, or it might just mean that they're nice people, but their no is still their no. And then another one popped in, a little guy who was clearly kind of a little bit more maybe a bit more oh, how do I put this, a little bit more down with the patter, let's just say. And he came over to me, and he came over to the conversation because this guy I was speaking to clearly wasn't handling it particularly well, because we were having a real conversation, not one based in religion and faith, but one based in real human kind of reality, like what does no mean to you? Anyway, so the other one came over and he said, you know that we're all celibate monks. And I was like, I didn't ask if you were celibate monks. I just asked what no means. And he said, well, you do also know that we revere all women as the mother. I just found myself, a proud moment, maybe not, saying, well, did your mother never say no to you either? Because I am watching this happen over and over and over again. And I get that you're being kind, and I get that you have, what you have to share requires conversation. And I get that and he said, we just have gifts to share, Laura. And, we do that by connecting with people. And if they connect with us, then we want to share, happiness and love. We don't take any money from anyone. We're not selling anything. Well, let me just tell you, that was not the case. They're not selling, but they are asking for donations for everything they give away. So there was no free giveaway. Everything was asked for a donation, and it really, really triggered me. And I watched it happen over and over and over and over again, hour upon hour. They weren't chasing men. They were mainly approaching women. They were overriding boundaries in the name of peace and spirituality. And I'm sorry, but I call bullshit. because spiritual bypassing doesn't make it okay, because a robe and a mantra do not make it respectful. Because if you continue to engage with someone after they've said no, you are not connecting, you are violating. The following day, I had another little experience, and I watched this woman who was clearly kind of trying to say no. She had said no a few times, and this guy is still standing there wanting her to take the books and to give them a donation. And I just went up behind her and I said, just so you know, your no is okay. It's okay for you to say no very clearly, very specifically. You don't have to feel guilty about it. You don't have to feel like you're being rude. You say no, these guys will respect your no, and that is enough. Anyway, she kind of went, whew, phew. You could see that relief, and she kind of came away with me. She still had a pile of their books under her arm, which, you know, they didn't get a donation for. Apologies for that. But this guy, he was like, what just happened, Laura? And I was like, what just happened was you were still not listening to this woman's no. And I understand it now. I have been watching and I understand that your sense is she didn't say no. Your sense is that she said, you know, no, I'm just going here, or I'm just doing this, or she didn't actually disengage with a no. The men say no. They often even put their hand out and say no. They don't smile at you. They don't kind of connect with you in that way. So that makes it okay, because actually that would be more difficult to get over. So I'm not blaming you. I am saying that actually, and here's the real kicker, ladies, they only keep doing it and kept doing it because we let them. And I don't say that to blame us. I say that to point to the cultural sickness that we are all swimming in. As women, we've been taught over and over again that it is our job to make people comfortable, to smile even when we feel unsafe, to be nice even when we're being pushed, to accept what's given even when we never asked for it. So they know by putting a book in your hand, you are likely to say yes, because it would feel rude for you to hand it back, or actually you don't even know how to hand it back. And in doing that, even when it's unconscious, we send a message that no doesn't really mean no. It just means keep trying. And that is not okay. It's not in our sacred spaces, not in our streets, not in our homes, not in the pub, not in the nightclub, not in our healing communities, not anywhere. And it really led me to those times where, you know, I've had sex and I haven't wanted to. I have gone out for a drink and I haven't wanted to. I have said no numerous times. But was my no clear enough? It shouldn't have to be. My no should be no, that's it, regardless. But I want to say something loud and clear. To every man who's ever persisted after a no, and to every woman who's ever questioned herself for not wanting to be rude, your discomfort does not override my boundary. If I say no, that's it. It doesn't mean ask again in 5 minutes. It doesn't mean try a gentler approach. It doesn't mean give me some flowers and see if I soften. It means no. And if you're uncomfortable with that, that's your work, not mine. And sisters, here's the part where we reclaim our power. We don't owe anyone a performance. Not a smile, not a second explanation, not a softening of our no to make them feel better. Because every time we say maybe later, every time we take the drink we didn't ask for, every time we shrink or no to kind of a polite shrug, oh no, you know, we teach the world that our boundaries are optional, and they're not. So what do? I'd love you just to take a moment, take a pause, take a breath, wherever you are right now. And I'm laughing because for those of you that are spiritually enlightened with numbers, this is 11:11 on Friday the 30th of May. As I'm saying this to you, take a breath. Let all of my words land in your body right now. Let any big emotions rise around this, because believe me, I had to sit with everything that was uncomfortable over the weekend. I knew it wasn't the Hare Krishna's fault, bless their hearts, but I had to sit with it until I could no longer sit and watch it anymore. I'm going to have a little drink because this one is big. It's meant so much to me, and I've sat with it all week thinking, how am I going to share this? No, I'm just going to do it, because what we need to do is we get brave. We say no clearly, fiercely, and without apology. We teach our daughters that their no is holy, and we teach our sons to listen the first time. We look other women in the eye when they say no and say, I believe you. I've got your back. Because this isn't just about a moment at a wellbeing festival. This is about a world that needs to relearn that respect actually means respect. What does it mean to respect each other as human beings? What does consent really mean? So here's your reminder today, beloved sister. You don't have to smile if you don't feel safe. You don't have to say yes to keep the peace. And you don't have to explain yourself, soften the blow, or make it easier for him. Now, I know there are many of you listening to this, and some of you will have learned my story and heard me share my story. I was married, the first marriage, not my children's father. I was married for 13 months when I was 22. There's a story around how that all happened, but I married a Scotsman. 6 weeks after I met him online, I moved to Scotland. I gave up my whole life. It was a classic rebound. Like I said, I can tell you that story another day. He was a police officer. I moved to Scotland. And I spent 13 months every time I said no, getting a beating. So I felt I had no choice but to say no. I felt I had no choice but to keep showing up and keep doing what I had to do to be the good wife. I didn't have anyone to turn to. I was hundreds of miles away from home. I was trying to find my way at 22 in a place that I didn't know. His mum was a harsh woman who would have nothing bad said about her boy. And he used to say to me, who are you going to call? You call the police, they're all my friends. Where's that going to get you? So I believed that I didn't have a place to say no. And so if you're listening to this and you are stuck in any of those places where it's your no is dangerous, then I really hear you. And I really urge you to reach out and lean in to find the people around you that can support you to really truly find your no and say it and move forward. The clear thing is that you get to say no in your life, and that is enough. Let's make that the new standard. Let's be the generation that teaches the world what consent actually means. I talk about that we are a generation of change makers. Apologies if you can hear the dogs barking in the background. There's some workmen working in the house today, and it's classic that it happened on a Friday morning when I do my recordings. I do them on a Friday morning because it's my routine, it's my rhythm, and my ADHD brain works that way. But last night we went out to turn all the lights off and everything was flooded. So we've got them in the house sorting that out so that I can have the water turn back on. But anyway, I digress because that's my brain. But when I talk about being the change maker and the generational pattern breakers, right? Like we as a human race have reached a stage where shit has to change. This can't go on. The way that we create and we are in the world can't go on. And I know there are many more that feel this way, like me, especially like this army of menopausal women right now, because we are the ones that grew up. Most of us grew up as the babies of war babies. So my mum was born not long after the war. My grandparents would have been in that phase of like making sure that they, their own nervous systems would have been on edge and jangly all of the time. They had lived through a war. They were on rations. They didn't know how to kind of be. They were stiff upper lip Britain because all of those big emotions had to be pushed down so that they could get through. My mum was that generation. My mum and dad were that generation that were born to those people, those parents that weren't particularly loving and holding, and that you had to just be polite to everybody and you had to, make sure everybody was okay because you didn't know what was going to happen. So my mum and dad are that generation, as I'm sure so many of your mum and dads were. They were that generation. When you recognize that about them, when you recognize what their upbringing was like, my dad can't even talk about his upbringing because my grandfather was pretty Welshy. You never said no to my granddad, otherwise you'd have known about it. Like, that is how we have begun to create this reality in society, in our lives, and way back, way back, way back, I'm sure. But this is my experience and my lived experience. So I grew up having to be the good girl, having to be quiet. My dad still is a truck driver at nearly 75. And I had to be quiet all the time. Be quiet, dad's sleeping. Don't go there, your dad's sleeping. I had to be passive around men all of the time. My granddad, my dad's dad, was involved in some pretty shady business, I'm sure, in London. The Krays were his friends, like for those of you that know that story, and I used to have to sit on the knees of his friends, all suited and booted, very polite, shiny shoes, and it was expected. Oh, go and give so and so a kiss. And now I'm like, ick. Now I'm like, there's no way my child would have ever been put through that. My child doesn't give anyone a hug. Anyone. I have to just pause. The workmen clearly need me. And I'm back in the room. Apologies for that. Those of you watching, those of you listening, the joys of living on a farm. No water, apparently, for the rest of the day. And until someone can come and fix it. So that's going to be fun. Anyway, what was I saying? Where was I at before I got really interrupted? Let me take a breath. So I think I was sharing with you about kind of my experiences of where I said no, or I couldn't say no, and those things that were just too much. And so when I talk about us being the change makers and the pattern breakers, it's like, look back at your own life already. How many patterns have you broken? I don't parent like my parents parented, because I am much more loving, much more kind of open, much more huggy. Now, I'm not a perfect mum by any means, but I love my kids. And it's not that my parents didn't love me, but they found it hard to share that openness around love and that openness around being proud of me. Like, just wasn't in their makeup, wasn't in their DNA. So when I talk about us being the ones that will break it, we are the ones who will break this as well. And when I look at the kind of younger kind of generation coming forward, like, there is so much that's changed, but this doesn't appear to change. In fact, it's getting worse from what I see. There isn't that level of respect anymore. I look at my husband and our generation, and there is more respect, I feel, in that kind of way. But I think we were also the generation that broke this respect. We were also the generation that could have it all, wanted it all, could see it all, and went out to get it no matter what. So, let's think about this. How do we change it? What can we do? Where can we really, really connect and know that no is enough? If this episode has landed with you, please share it. Send it to a sister. Talk about it in your circles. If you're a woman that creates safer space or circles or creates groups, I never use the word holding space because that frustrates me. So that's a story for another time. But if, consent, regulate consent. I don't hug another woman, even in my own spaces, unless I've asked her if it's okay. I never go up to a woman who's in tears and put my hand on her shoulder. It might not be okay. I will always regulate consent. So talk about it in your circles. Start the conversations that shake things up, because that's where change begins, especially if you have children of your own. Have those conversations. My son's now 20, right? And we've been having those conversations around no and around consent since he was small, and around women and what that really means. And that means that, he has not done the things that other people may be doing at his age. He's not been out running around, hanging out with loads of women and loads of girls. If it's got four wheels, he's happy in an engine. But part of that is also because there's a deep respect for women. I know that about him because I see how he moves through the world. So start the conversations, shake things up, let our girls know it's okay to say no, and do it yourself. The only way we are going to change this is if we feel brave enough to change it ourselves. So start and let people know, right? Let your husbands, your partners know. Do you know what? I want to test this no, because I find it really hard. I'm a people pleaser. I'm an overgiver. I find it really hard to say no and it be okay. And I get caught up in things, I get caught up in things because even the person on the telly trying to sell me something, it starts something in me that I can't say no to. And if you're looking for a space where your no is deeply sacred, where your truth is welcome and your healing is so real, then check out us, check out the Sacred Sister Sanctuary. We do things very differently in there. It's really important to me that is a part of what we really stand for. So if this episode has also lit a fire in your belly, if you felt the sting of those moments where your voice was truly ignored, where your no was bypassed, where your worth was put second to someone else's comfort, then you should probably also come and check out Bloom. Bloom is definitely for you. This isn't just a free event, it's an absolute soul reset. It's a 3-day portal into remembering who the fluff you are and reclaiming the voice that you were taught to soften. It's where we will rise together, where we are going to 10x our self-worth, where we stop people pleasing, overthinking and staying small to keep others comfortable. Because when women remember their worth, we become the difference that the world is aching for. We no longer have to kind of sit with how is it going to be. We just become it because we know our worth, and that means our no is our no, no matter what. So just know, ladies or gents, whoever's listening, know that your no is enough, that your body is yours, and that your voice, it's a revolution. Take it easy. Thank you for joining me today around the kitchen table. I've been Laura, signing out. Take care. Bye for now.